Hi sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Beth, and if you're new, welcome. Today I'm doing a little bit of applique onto an old piece of linen, and I put it on a frame. I'm going to show you how I did it. Let's get started. To get the image for my cardinal today, I went to Google and I just looked for drawings of birds, and I sketched one out on a piece of paper. To make my little applique picture, I started with a frame, a stretched canvas frame, and an old piece of linen that I just loved the stitching on this old small tablecloth, or maybe it was a towel. I think it was probably a little table cover, and it has some holes and stains, and I want to use a little piece of this for the background of my cardinal, my red bird that I'll be putting onto this. And I'm also using a product called Steam-A-Seam, and it's a iron-on applique. Here's the bird that I drew on the paper of the Steam-A-Seam, and I just cut it out, and that's going to be the pattern applique for my project today. The Steam-A-Seam has one sticky side and one paper side, so I removed the paper and then I laid that sticky side there on the back of my red fabric. And here's an example, since I wasn't able to film there's the sticky side and the paper side, and so I take off the paper and lay down the sticky side on the back of my fabric. After pressing the Steam-A-Seam onto the back of my fabric, I cut around right along the edge of my bird. If you're doing something that needs to be really exact, it's best to leave yourself a little margin of Steam-A-Seam so that you can cut through the paper. I failed to do this on this bird. I think I was just rushing ahead a little bit too much. And so I'm trying to cut as close as I can to the edge, and actually I'm taking just a little bit of the edge of that paper off, so the Steam-A-Seam will go right to the edge of my fabric. After figuring out where I want my bird and fabric to go, I laid my frame down and I cut around the frame, leaving quite a bit of fabric that it's going to wrap around to the back of this frame. So I'm leaving quite a bit of extra fabric to wrap onto my frame. Now that I have an idea of where the fabric will be, I laid my bird onto the fabric, and now I'm going to give myself just a couple of dots so I'll know where to center it when I walk over to my ironing board. And I need to remove the paper from the back, so you just go to the edge and make sure that the sticky part is on your fabric, and you remove the paper. And then I'll be pressing my bird onto this vintage linen. After getting my bird onto my picture here, I drew a little wing, just really rough idea of where my wing is going to go and what size. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is what I call folk art. It just gives you the impression of a bird. It's definitely not true to life, but I think we all know it looks like a bird, and it's getting there. And I'm going to take that wing and I'm going to put it onto another red fabric so that I have a little dimension in this picture that I'm creating today. Using the photos of the illustrations that I had looked up on Google, I'm adding another detail to this cardinal, and it's just a black sort of a circle area around the beak, and I'll be cutting that out of my paper and then putting it on a small piece of black fabric. As you can see, I've added a beak, and now I'm going to try an eye for this cardinal. I used a French knot here for the eye, and I then decided it just didn't pop enough, so I went again looking for some fabric. This eye really would probably work okay, but I wanted something a little bit better, so I found some fabric with black dots, and that's what I'll be using again with that steamosine. After adding the legs and feet, you kind of get the idea. There are some legs there. They're kind of light colored. I don't know if those should be darker or not, but that's what I used. And at this point, it's time to secure this cardinal onto the fabric. Some of the options would be to zigzag around the edges, to do a blanket stitch around the edges, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add some large stitches just to give this bird a little dimension. I'm going to add some feathers on the chest area and the wing area, and then I will be also tacking down that eye with a few stitches, and before you know it, this bird will be done and I'll be able to attach this beautiful applique to that frame. Now that all of my embroidery stitches are in there, I'm going to attach this picture to my wooden frame with some staples. I'll stretch it. First I'll center it and then I'll stretch it and try to get those corners smooth. That was the most difficult part of this project, was just getting the corners to be smooth. I tucked in the raw edges and I stapled all the way around. I decided after the fact that I would cover the back of this picture with some brown heavyweight paper. So I drew all the way around my picture, and then I'm going to be gluing this brown paper to the back of my bird. So I really didn't need to tuck in those raw edges. This is sort of a project that I'm figuring it out as I go along, and I think this will be a good option for the back of this picture. The last thing I need to do is to put a little picture hanger on the top. It was really simple. I had it in a drawer here at home, and I'm going to put 2 nails in there, and my cardinal applique picture will be done. This was a great project. I had a lot of fun putting it together. It's always nice to sew with you. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.